with our continuous coverage of the Pulwama attack, the government of India has said that it will give a befitting response to Pakistan for the dastardly terror attack in Pulwama. Indian Finance Minister Arun Jaitley said that the government of India has decided to strip Pakistan of its most favoured nation status and that the government will take all steps to ensure diplomatic isolation of Pakistan. Jaitley added that New Delhi will also urge the United Nations to define terrorism and that the Indian security forces have been given full freedom to respond appropriately.
The Ministry of External Affairs will initiate all possible steps, and I'm here referring to all possible diplomatic steps which have to be taken to ensure the complete isolation from the international community of Pakistan, of which incontrovertible evidence is available of having a direct hand in this gruesome terrorist incident. The Ministry of External Affairs in due course will continue to keep you informed with regard to the steps that it is taking. The most favoured nation status which had been granted to Pakistan stands withdrawn. Ministry of External Affairs will also engage with the international community to make sure that the comprehensive convention on international terrorism, which has been pending for over 3 decades before the United Nations, particularly because of the definition of the word terrorism, is now adopted at the earliest.
And to add more perspective to this entire news story, I'm joined in by Mr. Vivek Karju, former Indian ambassador to Afghanistan. He joins us live from New Delhi. Mr. Karju, welcome to Wion. Now, what India has witnessed yesterday has been one of the worst terror attacks in the history of Jammu and Kashmir. Should our message to Pakistan be one limited to diplomacy or one that requires coordinated military action?
The diplomatic message will certainly not have an impact on Pakistan which would lead it to desist from using terrorist groups to further its interests against India and in Afghanistan. These steps are good in themselves, but they will have no impact at all on the terrorist groups either. So of that we should be certain. Neither the withdrawal of the MFN status, because Pakistan's trade with India is limited, and they in any case have not given us MFN status, nor the plan to launch a diplomatic campaign to isolate Pakistan will yield results in curbing Pakistan's tendencies to pursue with terrorism.
Right. Ambassador Karju, is it possible that India-Pakistan projects like the Kartarpur corridor or the Indus Treaty are put on hold and that India approaches the IMF to not grant a bailout package to nations like Pakistan, which allows its soil to be used for terrorist strikes?
Look, let's not forget that at this time, the United States and its allies are deeply engaged with Pakistan as the United States tries to withdraw from Afghanistan. These countries need Pakistan's goodwill. Now, it is true that the United States is using financial and economic means to curb Pakistan. So, in that perspective, they may help the IMF to keep or put pressure on the IMF to keep the financial assistance package towards Pakistan on hold. But I doubt if they will take Indian concerns into account. Yes, the US and all European countries have condemned the Pulwama attack, just as they had condemned such attacks in the past. In this fight against Pakistani terror, India must never forget that at the end of the day, it is alone. It stands alone. And it has to carry out this struggle by its own means. Diplomatic campaigns are good, but the interests of other countries in Pakistan are fairly substantial, especially at this juncture. We can't overlook these perspectives.
Right. Ambassador, just some time ago, Union Minister Arun Jaitley just announced a few steps which also included the withdrawal of the MFN status that you also rightly mentioned that some time ago. You know, do you think that this will actually have a direct impact on Pakistan?
No. To what extent does Pakistan depend on the Indian market? It is very limited. In any case, as I said, Pakistan has never extended MFN status to us. So as a symbolic gesture, it is important because it shows to Pakistan and the Pakistani public and the international community that India's patience is running out. But beyond symbolism, quite frankly, I do not see that it will really trouble Pakistan in any major way. What does it depend on India for? Is it for remittances? No. Is it that it is dependent on the Indian market for its exports? No. It's at this time, if there is a linkage, economic linkage, which Pakistan really values, it is with China.
Right. It's interesting that you mentioned China, and China's deafening silence on the Pulwama attack and its repeated efforts to actually shield Azhar have actually been a worry and are now a growing concern for India. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I saw the Ministry of External Affairs statement yesterday, which it had issued yesterday, and that statement calls on the international community to ensure that Masood Azhar is listed as a UN terrorist, and we know that the Chinese are holding it back. I wish that India had named China forthrightly and called on China to lift its hold on the Masood Azhar listing. Why should we refrain from identifying China at this time? Because it is China which is holding back on this issue. The Wuhan spirit is important, but surely at this time the Chinese would understand that India needs to name them. And if they don't, well, so be it.
Absolutely. A very interesting point made by you that the Wuhan spirit is important, and maybe in accordance with that spirit, they need to name the terrorists at the UN. Now, what measures, according to you, sir, in accordance with the international law, can India take to isolate Pakistan at the global stage?
Look, what does isolation mean? Let's be clear on this.
Right.
I don't understand this word at all, diplomatically. If we want that the international community should criticize Pakistan for the terrorist action, well, yes, that is something that we can try, and we should try, so that we expose Pakistan's involvement in terror, which is known in any case, but that we expose it fully would be a worthwhile diplomatic pursuit. But as I mentioned to you, at this time, let us not be oblivious of the fact that the United States and other countries are deeply engaged with Pakistan for their own purposes. And that purpose is Afghanistan.
Absolutely.
Would it be realistic for us to expect that the United States will break off all contacts with Pakistan and then continue being troubled in Afghanistan? We should be realistic in these matters.
Ambassador Karju, it's very interesting that you mentioned Afghanistan, and that is exactly what I'm about to come to. Taliban is at the negotiating table with the United States, and we can say that the United States has also been off guard as it begins to withdraw troops. Do you see a link of Taliban being at the negotiating table with this current attack in Pulwama?
I don't think the Taliban would factor this in at all when it comes to their contacts with the United States. Let us not forget that, and this is what the report that I have read recently, that the next meeting between the Taliban and the United States might be in Islamabad. Yes, at this juncture, we could urge the United States that Islamabad would not be the right venue for this, especially after this attack. And then let us see if the United States at least pays heed on that account.
All right. Ambassador, I'm going to request you to just stay with us for the moment, as Prime Minister Narendra Modi headed the high-powered cabinet meet on security this morning, in which India's response to the Pulwama terror attack was also discussed. What he said after that were his strongest words yet against Pakistan. The Prime Minister has given a free hand to the Indian security forces to give what he called a jaw-breaking response to Pakistan. Prime Minister Modi said the perpetrators of this attack would have to pay for this ghastly terror attack and will be punished. He vowed that India will not let the sacrifices of its soldiers go in vain. Importantly, he asked parties to refrain from playing politics over the Pulwama terror attack and said those who want to destabilize India will not succeed.
मैं आतंकी संगठनों को और उनके सरपरस्तों को कहना चाहता हूं कि वे बहुत बड़ी गलती कर चुके हैं। बहुत बड़ी कीमत उनको चुकानी पड़ेगी। इस हमले की वजह से देश में जितना आक्रोश है, लोगों का खून खौल रहा है, ये मैं भली भांति समझ पा रहा हूं। इस समय जो देश की अपेक्षाएं हैं, कुछ कर गुजरने की भावनाएं हैं, वो भी स्वाभाविक है। हमारे सुरक्षा बलों को पूर्ण स्वतंत्रता दे दी गई है। इस समय बड़ी आर्थिक बहाली के दौर से गुजर रहे हमारे पड़ोसी देश को ये भी लगता है वो ऐसी तबाही मचाकर भारत को बदहाल कर सकता है, उसके ये मंसूबे भी कभी पूरे होने वाले नहीं हैं। वक्त ने सिद्ध कर दिया है कि जिस रास्ते पर वो चले हैं, वो तबाही देखते चले हैं, और हमने जो रास्ता अख्तियार किया है, वो तरक्की करता चला जा रहा है।
We just heard what Prime Minister Modi had to say. On that note, let me also bring in Ambassador Karju, who's joining us live from New Delhi. Ambassador, we just heard Prime Minister Modi has given full operational freedom to the military. Now, do you think there is a possibility of a military operation at the moment, since that is exactly what happened post the Uri attack?
I think the Prime Minister has indicated that the kinetic options are also on the table. Because when you say that the military has been given full authority to carry out, to take steps which it thinks are necessary, that is what is the import. But let us not forget that any action that the military takes will have to have political backing of the Prime Minister. The political aspects of a military action cannot be divorced from the military action per se. In a democracy like ours, the military acts under the authority of the government, and whatever plans it makes will need government's approval, not the fighting plans, but not the actual tactics which it employs, but the overall plan, the objective of that plan, etc., needs political clearance.
very rightly said that there has to be political clearance if there has to be any military action being contemplated on. On that note, let me also bring in the opposition's reaction. Ambassador Karju, let's listen in. Calling the terror attack a terrible tragedy, Congress President said that the aim of the terrorism is to divide the country, and Congress has said that the entire opposition stands with the government and the people of India. Let's listen in to Congress President's reaction.
That the aim of terrorism is to divide this country, and we are not going to be divided for 1 second. No matter how hard people try, this country and the entire opposition is going to stand together. We are going to stand with our Jawans, and we're going to stand with the government.
And in the latest news coming in, Saudi Arabia has also condemned the dastardly attack on India's forces. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia issued a statement a day before Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman is all set to visit Pakistan. The statement read, and I quote, "Kingdom rejects these cowardly terrorist attacks and stands with the friendly Republic of India against terrorism and extremism, offering condolences to the families of the victims, Indian government and people, and wishing the injuries a speedy recovery." So that is the latest that we are getting in. Saudi Arabia has also reacted. Now, a day after the worst attack in the valley since militancy, India's Central Reserve Police Force makes it clear that the sacrifice of the 40 personnel will not go in vain. CRPF took to Twitter to send a message. They said, and I quote, "We will not forget, we will not forgive. We salute our martyrs of Pulwama attack and stand with the families of our martyr brothers. This heinous attack will be avenged." So that is the CRPF taking to Twitter and reacting that they will not forget and they will not forgive. Also paying a tribute to the 40 martyrs of the Pulwama attack. Let me go back to Ambassador Karju and get in his take on Saudi Arabia's reaction, which of course, as we know, is going to be playing a pivotal role in Pakistan, and followed by their visit to Pakistan. They will also, Mohammed bin Salman will also be in India after the Pakistani visit. But how do you analyze this reaction? Do you think, sir, this is going to be merely limited to lip service? Because let's not forget, there's a lot of heavy investment that Pakistan is looking at coming from Saudi Arabia.
It's not only investment. The Saudis want the Pakistanis to help them in their Yemen campaign.
Right.
That has been a long-standing desire, and the former Pakistani Army Chief Rahil Sharif heads that international force which the Saudis have cobbled up against so-called terrorism, that what they've said. And Rahil Sharif was recently in Pakistan. So the anticipation is that the Saudis will want the Pakistanis to send men, which they wanted earlier, for the Yemen war. Now we need to see how far will the Pakistanis respond to this. But the important thing in this is that while the Saudi statement is welcome, its condemnation of terrorism is good, but as you've said, is it far enough? That is something that we need to examine, because Mohammed bin Salman, as you've rightly noted, is visiting the region. He's visiting Pakistan first, then I think he goes to Southeast Asian countries, Malaysia and Indonesia, before he comes to India, perhaps on the 19th evening, and he'll have talks with Prime Minister Modi on the 20th morning. So this is also a preparation for his visit to India, to show that he is not unmindful of the tragedy that India has suffered.
Right. Ambassador, some very fair points made by you over there. Let's also speak about the crucial CCS meet that just took place in the morning, as Prime Minister Narendra Modi chaired a crucial meeting of the government's topmost security panel, the Cabinet Committee on Security, or the CCS. What's noteworthy is that this is the third time that the pictures of the high-profile meet have been released. The high-level meeting was headed by the Prime Minister, Defence Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, and Home Minister Rajnath Singh, External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj, and Finance Minister Arun Jaitley. These are pictures of the security meet which began at 9:15 a.m. Prime Minister Modi took stock of the situation along with a core team that includes the Home Minister and National Security Advisor Ajit Doval. The last time the pictures of a cabinet security meet were released was right after the Uri attack in 2016. Those pictures are on your screens now. And that CCS meet was called to discuss India's response and discuss security situation along the LOC. The meeting was attended by cabinet ministers as well as the military leadership, including the then army chief. The meetings came even as India summoned Pakistan High Commissioner Abdul Basit and handed over him ample evidence of Islamabad's role in Uri attack as well as in the Pathankot air base strike. India's surgical strike on Pakistan followed right after this meet. It's important to also delve into a bit of history at the moment, as back in 2002, the then Prime Minister late Atal Bihari Vajpayee also chaired a CCS meeting. That was the third instance when the government released pictures of this top-level security meet that happened in the backdrop of the 2001 Parliament attack and the security situation along the LOC. Now, also bringing in Ambassador Karju on that note, we are talking about the CCS meet, sir, and Union Minister Arun Jaitley also shared some very important points that emerged out of the CCS meet. But, you know, of course, a lot of the other details have been regarded as VIP information which have not been shared with us. But do you think that India has still not downgraded the diplomatic relationship with Pakistan, because the withdrawal of the special status that Pakistan enjoys, is that even enough?
Well, we've discussed this earlier, it is a symbolic gesture. Certainly, it is a step that, to my mind, will not impact on Pakistan's policies with regard to terror. Its policies, those policies are inherent to its security doctrine now. So I don't see that either the Pakistani government or the army or the terrorist groups will really be terribly concerned with this step. Yes, it is a step that will show to the international community that India is now deeply troubled with this attack, and that the Indian patience is running out. To that extent, it's important, but not as far as Pakistan is concerned.
Right. Ambassador, you said India is running out of patience, but it has been running out of patience for very long. Because if we look at the Parliament attack in 2001, we look at Uri attack, or even if we look at the Mumbai terror attack, every time India has approached the issue of terrorism emanating from Pakistan, there's been a dossier war to say. Is that even enough? What has to be India's approach now?
Look, let's go to basics. I believe that India, in the Indian political and strategic classes, do not consider Pakistani terror as a strategic challenge. They have downgraded it to a question of diplomatic and political management. The fact that you have raised Indian reaction and Indian responses to terrorist attacks in the past indicate the same thing. I think the belief here is that these terrorist attacks cause enormous pain, they raise passions, and that those passions then have to be dealt with politically. Once the passions die down, then things become routine again. This has been the cycle that has been going on for the last 2.5 decades. In the initial years in the 1990s, when Pakistani terror had begun in Kashmir, I think we took it seriously. We thought that it could impact on our territorial integrity. Starting from the mid-1990s, the Indian strategic classes, the Indian the defense forces, realized that that will not be so. So then it became a question of responding to these terrorist attacks politically because we felt that the country is not really losing out economically. I've seen people argue that during the time when Pakistan has calibrated this terrorism, sometimes increasing it, sometimes
Right.
decreasing it, is also been the time when India has really progressed and emerged as a major power in the world. Hence, they argue that it is not a strategic challenge, and that the loss in life and material can be absorbed by the country. I'm not saying that this is right. I'm saying that this is the thought process which seems to me to be operating. Now, if we want this to end, if we want to say that each life is important and the nation will not accept the loss of a life at the hand of Pakistani terror, then we've got to take other steps, more purposeful steps, steps that will be long drawn out, that will be...
We will be discussing those purposeful steps also, Ambassador Kajju.